I would have voted yes, because that would have made life easier in terms of trying to get an agreement, because it would have shown very clearly that the Greeks wanted to stay in the euro and that they were prepared to accept austerity measures, which they have done now for a number of years. So they weren't shying away from it anyway. And in fact, people who voted no, which is very interesting that they did in such a big number, and I did expect that fully, voted in a way that almost suggested that they didn't necessarily think that any other alternative would have been austerity as well. In reality, it was. They had no other alternative than austerity measures being imposed on them anyway, and that's the interesting thing about it.
I mean, yes, I mean, they look like they're celebrating like they've won the Women's World Cup or something like that. They really haven't, and it's going to be painful for them as it goes on. How painful is it now going to be for the rest of the Eurozone?
Oh, the Eurozone is rather worried about any contagion that there might be. In other words, it's not so much that suddenly the financial markets are all going to go belly up. I mean, in reality, they've been able to sort of withstand the shocks of Greece for some time now. It is really that suddenly the euro, if Greece leaves, is going to look reversible. In other words, this was a currency that was supposed to be there forever, and there was no way out. There wasn't anything in the sort of legal putting it together that said one country can leave. They were all bound in it together. So if one leaves, then why couldn't others, which have similar, very substantial problems with their debt, like Greece does?
Exactly. I was going to get onto that straight away. We'll get onto what it means for Britain in just a second. But what about those other countries like Spain who've really tightened their belts and you know, paying back debts? They're thinking, well, hang on a minute, why do we have to pay back anything if Greece can just turn its back? Well,
the reality is that Greece did tighten its belt very, very considerably. In fact, it had one of the biggest contractions of any advanced economy since the war, in fact. So it reduced its deficit very substantially, a lot faster than the UK, for example, has done, from 15% down to 2%. That's a remarkable turnaround that Greece has made. But austerity has been very severe on it. And the debt that it has accumulated, obviously, if your economy is collapsing, then as a percentage, what you've got as a debt increases, you know, without you doing anything about it.
It's still true, though, that isn't it, that almost a quarter of Greece's economy is the black market. So they're not earning tax on that money that's being exchanged.
It's true, but it's quite interesting when you look at other countries. Italy has a very big black economy. Spain, it's now been discovered, it has a very big black economy too, and there's been corruption in all these countries too. Very often when I talk about Greece to people, I could just say, just cross out Greece, put Italy, and it's very, very similar. So the problem is, of course, that Greece's issues have been accentuated by an austerity program that was particularly severe and expecting reforms in Greece to happen within just a few years, which just can't happen.
Is it right to think that, well, Britain's not in the Eurozone, we're safe from this? Or is the Chancellor George Osborne right that we are being sucked into this crisis too?
Well, what will really matter is what happens to the Eurozone economy. We do export 50% of our goods to them. Inevitably, if there is any crisis and there is volatility and uncertainty, that isn't going to be particularly helpful to us. One other side of it, of course, is that if there is turbulence, then obviously the euro is going to be quite weak, and the European Central Bank will put loads of cash into the market in order to calm things down, which means that their interest rates will stay low. A weak euro means a strong pound. It means we're uncompetitive in relation to other countries in Europe. And that's a serious problem for us. And some of the forecasts that are going to appear in the budget on Wednesday are going to have been based on expectations of the sterling exchange rate, which may just not be right.
So, I mean, could our interest rates somehow go up as a result of all of this?
I shouldn't think so at all, because the moment that sterling starts getting stronger, the incentive to raise interest rates is going to be reduced, because it will make us even more uncompetitive. So in some ways, it's good news in terms of anybody who's looking at the economy. Our interest rates will stay low for longer.